At the beginning of the film, we are shown with some criminals who robbed the weapons carriers in Odessa, Ukraine. Not only that, they also slaughtered scientists and took super sophisticated AI weapons. 2 days later, we were introduced to an agent named Nathan, and he was summoned to the government office. Upon arrival there, Nathan was given the task by Knighton to retrieve the AI weapon which was stolen 2 days ago. At first, Nathan refused this mission. But in the end, he agreed to do this mission after Knighton explained that if the weapon is in the wrong hand, it can be dangerous for the world. To succeed this mission, Nathan provided a super spy to lead his troops, and his name was Orson. Knowing that, at first, Knighton refused because the fee was very expensive. Moreover, he also wanted a lot instead. Knighton suggested Nathan to use John's services. However, Nathan also explained that currently, John was working at his competitor, Mike. Because there were no other choices, finally Knighton agreed and Nathan went to Africa to meet Orson, who was still recovering there. Nathan explained his purpose, but Orson firmly refused because at this time, he was recovering. After Nathan explained that the fee was very expensive and moreover this is related to world security, finally Orson agreed and they flew to Madrid, Spain to start the mission. Arriving in Madrid, there were 2 people who were already waiting for them. They are Sarah and J.J. Davies. Sarah is a great hacker, while J.J. Davies is a sniper and he is doing great in all aspects. So, the 2 of them were paid to help Orson on this mission. Long story short, they went straight to the airport to snatch the hard drive from a delivery man named Donald. They also divided the tasks, where Sarah was in the office to hack the camera and guide the team through the microphone, while Orson, J.J. Davies and 2 other support teams, Jane and Marcia, monitored Donald's movements. Professionally, they watched and would ambush Donald in a quiet place. But everything was not as easy as imagined, because there were also other teams who also wanted the hard drive. One by one, they paralyzed Jane and Marcia without being noticed by Sarah. Sarah, who was suspicious because they had no response, finally realized that there were other hackers manipulating the camera. Hearing that, Orson also realized that the culprit was John, who was currently working with Mike. Sarah, who managed to overcome her computer, immediately told Orson that there were 2 people who would attack him from behind. After managing to paralyze them, Orson immediately went out to arrest Donald. But there were already Mike's men who preceded them, so there was a fight there. After they succeeded, Nathan came to pick them up. In the car, Donald had a heart attack, and at the same time, there were some cars which chased them and cut their way to seize the hard drive. Seeing that his life would be taken by Martin, Donald said an important fact that he was forced to do this, because his wife was being held hostage. Even so, his face was not yet known by the person who was going to buy this hard drive. Therefore, Donald asked Nathan to go to the Duchess, Madrid and disguised as Donald, to meet the customer. In return, Donald begs them to save his wife. And after saying that, he dies. At that moment, they are also racing in time because from outside, Mike's gang are forcing to open the car door. When the data has been copied, the car door opens and Mike takes a copy of the hard drive. By using the microphone, Sarah explains that they don't need to worry because it is useless without a password. The only solution is that Nathan has to disguise himself as Donald to find out who bought the hard drive. Long story short, Nathan disguised himself as Donald and met the buyer. Sarah, who detected his face from a hidden camera, finally found out that one of them was named Ben Harris, who was a lawyer for an illegal arms dealer mafia boss, named Greg Simmons. Seeing that, Orson felt pessimistic and was not sure that he could catch Simmons, because he is very agile and he's one of the biggest arms dealers in the world. Sarah saw that Simmons liked orphans and was very fond of an artist, Denny Francisco. Finally, Sarah had the idea to take advantage of it. Quickly, they rushed back to America to pick up Denny Francisco. Shortly, they arrived and disguised themselves as Denny's new agent. Orson managed to escape and talk privately with Denny. There, Orson asked for help from Denny to take part in a charity event that was to be held by Simmons in France. At first, Denny refused firmly, but finally he couldn't move anymore after Orson showed if he had an affair video of Denny and his sister-in-law. Didn't want his big name to be destroyed by the video. Finally, Denny wanted to obey Orson's will. Immediately, the 3 of them went by boat. Arriving at the cruise ship where the show is taking place, Orson and Sarah ask Denny to distract Simmons while they're going to find as much information as possible. And sure enough, Simmons, who saw Denny, immediately approached him and asked him to have a talk. Orson and Sarah, who made up the strategy, accidentally saw Mike's men who were at the airport before. Hearing the information, they realized that Mike was also looking for information here. So, they split up and Sarah went into one of the rooms to set up a microphone, while Orson followed and beat Mike's men in a cool style. Back to Sarah. Here, she was found out by Ben Harris. With her acting skills, Sarah managed to deceive him and give some time for Orson. Orson, who saw that this man was nothing, seemed to be playing against him. After Orson throwing off Mike's men into the middle of the sea, Sarah immediately said goodbye to meet Denny on the deck. There, Simmons offered Denny and Sarah to stop by his villa in Turkey, because he wanted to show his lifestyle and all of his wealth. Shortly thereafter, Simmons' business partners came there, and they wanted to take a photo with Denny while Simmons whispered to Sarah and asked her to be his mistress, and he would give her a lot of his wealth. Later, Orson came and asked them all to leave. The scene moves and shows Nathan and Jeej, who were listening to Simmons' conversation with his business partner. From the conversation, it was revealed that the AI weapon would be sold for $10 billion, and more importantly, it turned out that Simmons was only an intermediary, because the original buyer's identity had not been revealed. In the next morning, they had a briefing and discussed who is going to buy the AI weapon. Because there is no other choice, finally Orson decides to plunge himself into Simmons' partner's house to steal the buyer's data. Shortly, in that evening, Orson sneaked into that house with the anesthetic gas. With Sarah's help, who hacks the CCTV, Orson circulated the gas into air ducts around the room. After everyone fainted, Orson entered the bedroom. Based on Sarah's guide, Orson managed to open the safe and copy all the data on the laptop. When he's done, Orson stole all their money and jewelry to trick them as if this was a robbery. However, just as he was leaving the door, Orson was caught by two guards who were still conscious. Then, Orson pretended to be scared, so they were both fooled. And at the right moment, Orson immediately tricked them and beat them both very easily. In the morning, they gathered again to check the results of the copy last night. But after searching it, they couldn't find what Simmons was going to sell. Shortly thereafter, they overheard a conversation between Simmons and someone named Qasim. There, Qasim told Simmons if their colleague, Alexander, was robbed by a mysterious person last night. Based on the investigation, it was revealed that the culprit was alone and he beat two of Alex's personal bodyguards easily. Orson, who heard this, looked calm, because his identity isn't known. Sarah, who's still hacking their data, finally gets Qasim's current location as well as his identity. It turns out that Qasim is a Turkish government official. Not only that, they also know that Simmons and Qasim will have a secret meeting in 3 days. To find out what they will do, Nathan orders Sarah and Denny to accept Simmons' invitation to visit his villa in Turkey. Short story, now, Sarah and Denny had arrived in Turkey and were specially welcomed by Simmons with his bodyguards. Not wanting to waste time, Simmons immediately showed his entire collection of antique cars. Seeing if Denny liked one of his cars, Simmons immediately gave it to Denny and they immediately did a test drive. While Sarah, who was left in the villa, rushed to carry out her plan to tamper with Simmons' computer. Seeing that there was CCTV above, which was monitored directly by Amelia, Simmons' assistant, Sarah turned around to hack it. Moved to Orson and JJ, who was currently monitoring Qasim's movements. There, Orson was surprised because he saw that there was Mike, who's also monitoring Qasim. Sarah, who had finished hacking the CCTV, immediately launched her action on Simon's computer to find information. Orson, who saw Ben Harris, decided to follow him secretly. It didn't take long for Sarah to find out and report her discovery to Nathan, that Simmons only bought the AK-47 that was robbed at the beginning of the film. Nathan, who heard that, seemed disappointed because they had the wrong person, because Simmons was not the buyer of the AI weapon they were looking for. Nathan contacted Orson to go back, because they're suspecting the wrong person. But Orson, who was very sure that Simmons was involved, decided to keep following Ben Harris secretly. Ben Harris, who was aware of this, immediately informed Simmons. Of course, JJ, who tapped Ben Harris's phone, also told Orson that Ben Harris already knew. J.J also ordered Orson to take action, because Ben Harris asked for reinforcements from Simmons. Hearing that, Orson immediately ambushed and beat Ben Harris's guard easily. Not wanting to get caught, Ben Harris escapes by stealing someone's motorbike. With JJ's help, Orson chased him by means of a shortcut. Unluckily, Ben Harris can trick Orson by climbing the building. Because he did not have access to the building, Orson decided to chase Ben Harris through the stairs. Seeing that there's someone else, Ben Harris had an idea to trick Orson. There, Ben Harris pretended to ask for help to be photographed. After that, secretly, he put his phone in that person's pocket. And when Orson arrived at the top, he did not find Ben Harris's existence, even though the location point was accurate. Orson was confused, then he looked down and how surprised he was after seeing if there was a corpse lying below. And in fact, it was the person earlier, who was pushed by Ben Harris. Orson, who was off guard, too, will be pushed by Ben Harris from behind. Luckily, with his reflexes, Orson managed to avoid it. JJ rushed to pick up Ben Harris's body and they immediately went back. Upon arrival at the headquarters, they received news from Knighton if the data sent by Sarah from Simmons' computer is true and accurate. If they are going to make a Cochrane hard drive transaction to activate the AI weapon, it's no joke that the weapon actually can launch a nuclear attack that the culprit cannot be identified yet. Even so, the person who will buy the hard drive didn't know Ben Harris's face because they transacted only via voicemail. Considering that Ben Harris had died, finally Orson decided to disguise himself as Ben Harris to thwart criminals who would destroy the Earth, so that everything would run smoothly. Orson asked for Sarah's help to change his voice to be similar to Ben Harris when he was going to call Simons later. After all the plans were neatly arranged, Orson immediately met the hard drive's buyer. At that time, Sarah managed to change Orson's voice to Ben Harris's voice by phone, so that Orson was not suspected and immediately taken to the destination of the transaction. Simmons, who did not know that Ben Harris had died, seemed normal and asked excuse for a moment to contact Ben Harris to guide the transaction. JJ, who had followed them from behind, immediately went down to protect Orson with a sniper. Arriving at the transaction point, it turns out that the buyer's name is Sergey. Didn't want to waste time, Sergey immediately opened the hard drive suitcase and asked Orson to enter the 15 passcode to open it. By asking help from Sarah, Orson called Simmons to ask for the code. And sure enough, Simmons is successfully tricked. And at that time, Simmons' guards realized that someone was eavesdropping on Simmons' conversation. They managed to enter the 15 codes from Simmons, then a $10 million transaction was successful. But from a distance, one of Alex's men realized that Orson was a person who robbed Alex's house a few nights before. Before they managed to touch Orson, JJ took action first to attack them and there was a fierce shootout. Sarah, who also managed to cancel the transaction, immediately fled from there with Denny. Back to Orson, who was being chased blindly by one of the helicopters. And when Orson was cornered, it was revealed that they were Mike's men. Mike, with his men, who managed to catch Sergey, coldly slaughtered them and took away the AI weapons. And before that, Mike ordered his men to execute Orson. But before that happened, JJ preceded them again to protect Orson. Simmons, who realized that Sarah is the hacker, immediately asked his bodyguards to hunt down Sarah and Denny. With her shooting skills, Sarah managed to bring down one of Simon's guards' cars. Seeing that the bullets had run out, the only way they could only run. Back to Orson and JJ, who tried to save Sarah using a helicopter. After seeing Sarah's whereabouts in the tunnel, Orson immediately catches up and fires missiles at their opponent. Nathan, who gets news from the authorities that Mike does not work with any government, then concludes that Mike is planning something evil. Hearing that, finally Orson has an idea to take advantage of all the evidence of Simon's crime and ask Simon to cooperate with them. At first, all the team was doubtful, but Orson convinced them and returned to Simon's base. Upon arrival, Orson immediately presented negotiations so that Simons would help them reclaim the AI weapons. At first, Simon refused, but after being persuaded by Denny, Simon finally agreed to help. Long story short, night came where Simons will show who Mike will sell AI weapons to. While Orson, JJ, and Sarah also took action from the other side. By using a drone, Sarah disrupted the communication of the guards, while Orson and JJ immediately paralyzed them all. Upon arrival in a room, it turns out that Mike sold the weapon to Trent and Arnold. They were Simon's business partners during the previous charity event, and it was revealed that they bought it to destroy the world's currency, so that it would create chaos and anarchy everywhere. While Simons broke their concentration, Orson and JJ secretly slaughtering all of Mike's men. To make it faster, Orson got into the car while slaughtering them. After all the guards outside were finished off, Orson continued to enter the building while slaughtering the rest of Mike's men inside. It didn't know what Simons was talking about, so they all slaughtered each other there.
Say Mike, now back the fuck off! Nobody moving.
After Orson managed to finish off all of Mike's men, he immediately entered the transaction room. There, Orson was surprised to see that everyone was dead. For a moment, when he was about to go carrying the AI weapon, it turned out that from behind, Mike attacked Orson. Mike, who couldn't do martial arts, seemed to be beaten blindly by Orson. After winning the fight, Orson came out and was picked up by JJ and Sarah. The next morning, they went to Doha, Qatar, to give the AI weapon to Nathan. Because the mission had been successful, here Nathan gave them another job and the pay was much bigger. But firmly, Orson refused, because they wanted to go on vacation to Dry Island to refresh their mind, and the film ended.